Hi everyone, my name is Tarun and today we're going to be talking about quadratic equations. So before we go too into the topic, I just want to make sure that if you haven't had the chance to cover these in school or you're just not at all familiar with quadratic equations, make sure you know the following first. Linear equations. Graphing. Y equals mx plus b. Solving for x in linear equations. And what a polynomial is. Alright, so the first thing that we need to know about quadratic equations is what quadratic equations are. So, quadratic equation is, this is defined by Google, but it's an equation that can be rearranged in standard form, which call it in a form where x is unknown. And A, B, C represent known numbers. So the structure of a quadratic is ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay? And remember that x is the variable. It's unknown. And a, b, and c are referred to as coefficients. And these are known. Okay, so what we're going to talk about in this video is solving quadratics. And let's talk about what this means. So a lot of times in math, you'll see a lot of problems where they have a quadratic, and the thing that makes it a quadratic, as a reminder, is that it has this term, x squared, okay? Exponent of 2 on x makes it quadratic. So when they say solving, they give you an equation like this, where you know A, B, and C, and they ask you what values of x make this true. So really what that means is if you were to plug in some values of x, it has to be 0. So let's do a few examples. So first, what if I say x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 0, and find x? Well, so we don't know about how to solve this here, right? All I've done is explain quadratics, but something you can do, and this is really introductory, is you can just use guess and check and see what values of x might work. So let's try using x equals 0. We get 0 squared plus 2 times 0 plus 1. That's 1, right? That's not 0. Let's try 1. 1 squared plus 2 times 1 plus 1. And remember, what I'm doing here is I'm just putting in 1 for x, right? Right? If you put 1 in, you get 1 squared plus 1 times 2 plus 1. So this one is 1 plus 2 plus 1, and that's 4. So it looks like we're getting farther away from 0, right? We went from 0 to 1, we went from 1 to 4, right? So that means as we increase, it looks like this equation is getting bigger. So let's try going backwards. Let's try x equals negative 1. Then we get negative 1 squared plus 2 times negative 1 plus 1. And that's, what's negative 1 squared? It's 1. 2 times negative 1, minus 2, and then plus 1, and this all equals 0. So we see that x equals negative 1 is one solution. But the thing about quadratics is they can have more than one solution. They have more than one x value that works. So let's talk about that. Okay, so the way that we solve quadratics is with this magic formula called the quadratic formula. And what this quadratic formula does, you input A, B, and C, and you get x, or the multiple x's that work, okay? So the quadratic formula is given as follows. X, which are the solutions for x for the quadratic equation, negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Some of you might have heard of that formula before, but really don't know what it means, or you might be really familiar with it. And if you're looking for proof of this formula, that will probably be released in a separate video on our lecture circuit, so look for that if you're curious. But anyway, what this means is, remember, a quadratic is set up like this: ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And if they give you, like the equation we did in the last example, x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 0, what is a, b, and c for this equation? Well, it's a equals 1, right? Because there's 1 x squared. B equals 2 because there's a 2 coefficient on the x. And then c equals 1, right? So then we just put these back into this quadratic formula, and we have negative b plus or minus. Remember, plus or minus is used, this symbol is used because there's two solutions for x. So you can either add or you can either subtract here. But we have inside the square root b squared minus 4 times a times c, 1 times 1, all over 2 times a. So we have negative 2 plus or minus, what's 4 minus 4 times 1 times 1? 4 minus 4, just 0. So that's just 0 over 2. So now we know, okay, I have no idea why that's not going away, but now we have negative 2 plus 0 over 2, and plus or minus, and then we know that x can be negative 2 plus 0 over 2, or negative 2 minus 0 over 2. So that's what plus or minus means. You can either plus or minus. And so this is negative 1, and the other one is negative 1. So in this case, and just this case, x has one solution, and it is negative 1. So what you would say in this case is solution is negative 1 multiplicity 2. Okay? And this is kind of complicated, and it's not really that essential that you memorize this, but just know people say this when there's only one solution for the quadratic. But now we have to go over ways where we see that the quadratic has two solutions. So let's do an example for that. So use a new color. I'm feeling a new color. Let's go purple. Okay, so let's do another example. X squared plus 4x plus 3. Okay, so if you want, you can pause the video here and try to see what you think A, B, and C are. But remember that this is the form of a quadratic. So yeah, try to pause the video and see if you can get what A, B, and C are in this case. Okay, so we have A is 1x squared, so A is 1. You can see B is bx, 4x, B is 4, C, 3, C equals 3. Use the quadratic formula. And if you don't have this quadratic formula memorized, I would say it's really important that you have it memorized, or else otherwise are you really experienced with factoring, then that's good, and we'll go over that in a little. So anyway, using the quadratic formula, we have negative 4 plus minus, what is b squared? 16 minus 4 times 3 times 1, all over 2 times a, which is 2. So we have negative 4 plus or minus 16 minus 4 times 3 times 1, which is 12. So 16 minus 12, square root of 4 over 2. So we have negative 4 plus or minus 2 all over 2, because the square root of 4 is 2. So what are the equations for, what are the solutions for x? We have x equals negative 4 plus 2 over 2, and negative 4 minus 2 over 2. So what's negative 4 plus 2 over 2? It's negative 1. And what's negative 4 minus 2 over 2? So negative 6 over 2. So negative 3. So those are the two solutions for x in this case. X equals negative 1 and x equals negative 3. So those are the two solutions for x squared plus 4x plus 3 equals 0. And something that I think you should do when you use a quadratic formula is, why don't we substitute these back and make sure these work. So we'll start with negative 1. So we have negative 1 squared plus 4 times negative 1 plus 3. So that is 1 minus 4 plus 3, and that's 0. Now let's test negative 3. Negative 3 squared plus 4 times negative 3 plus 3 equals 9 minus 12 plus 3, and that's also equal to 0. So yeah, we got the right two solutions. And remember, quadratics never have more than two solutions. Okay, great. So let's use the quadratic formula. Except we don't see x here, we see r. But does that really make a difference? No, r is still a variable. And that's all it really needs to be. So a equals 1, 1r squared, b 3r, so 3, and c minus 70, so negative 70. Quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Let's plug these in. Negative 3 plus or minus 3 squared, which is 9, minus 4 times negative 70 times 1 all over 2. So we have negative 3 plus or minus 9 plus 4 times 7 minus 4 times negative 70, so plus 280 over 2. So you have negative 3 plus or minus square root of 289 over 2. And you should definitely try and memorize these square roots for larger numbers, and you would know that the square root of 289 is 17. Negative 3 plus or minus 17 over 2. So x equals negative 3 minus 17 over 2, or negative 3 plus 17 over 2. So it's negative 10 or 7. Okay? So in this case, x still represents r, so r is negative 10 or 7. Don't forget that we don't need this to be x. We don't need these to be x's. The only reason I made them x's is because that's what the quadratic formula says, but it's just a variable. All you really need is this right here, the a, b, and the c. Okay, so this right here is a challenge problem, and this does have to do with quadratics. What is the sum of all real numbers x such that 4 to the x minus 6 times 2 to the x plus 8 equals 0? So I'll give you a hint. And if you don't want this hint at all and you think you can do it, just keep going. Don't even use this. But make 2 to the x equal to a, another variable. Okay? See where that takes you. Okay? And also leave your answer in the comments for this problem. What is the sum of the all real numbers x? And if you can, for extra points, give us a solution. It might be hard to detail it in the YouTube comments, but try your best to just talk about your ideas as you solve this problem. All right, thanks guys.